Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and my podcast. So, the last time I was here with you, I was talking to a friend of mine, Sam. We were talking about beauty standards, overcoming fear and doubt, and all those things. If you hadn't got a chance to watch that and this is your first time seeing me here, definitely go check that out on my YouTube channel, Elijah Music. Now, before I get into this new episode here, I officially decided to brand this podcast portion of my channel called ElijahTalks because I'm Elijah and I talks. So, just to kind of introduce my guest on today, I have my friend, my brother Seth. I appreciate you being here, man. How are you?
I'm well. Hello. For those that don't know me, I'm Seth. This is my second time being on the
Yeah.
podcast, so I do appreciate that.
Yeah. The first time we chatted, it was with two other guys, my friend Will, my brother Daniel.
hmm
It's awesome to get to talk to people that is super down to earth, and just have a good time. So I thought I was like this would be awesome opportunity to do this. So I just want to jump right into it like I always do. Um, Communication is the first thing I wanted to talk about, and of course, it's a very broad subject, but when it comes to communication, usually it's tied to relationships, not just romantic, of course, platonic as well.
Yeah.
But personally, for me, that's been, for the most part, a strong suit. And it's always been difficult for the most part to navigate that with other people because everybody has different and unique communication styles.
hmm
And when you're a little kid, you just know how you communicate. And then as you get older, right, you start to find out what is best for people and how to not just speak to people in communication, but how to interpret communication.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to start off by asking you, like, what is your preferred method of communication, and have you struggled with that as far as expressing yourself and having just dialogue with people?
I'm direct. So
Okay.
like if I have anything to say,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to you and I'm going to have either thought about what I was gonna say
Yeah.
or I just need to communicate with you. But I just want to ask you, how big is communication to you? Because communication is huge to me.
Yeah.
And I find I find it crazy how, if I'm relating, if people know me, if you know
Yeah.
me
Right.
and I relate that to you
Mm-hmm.
and you know how I am with, if you have something to
Right.
say it. Like, don't let me
Yeah.
guess what it is that you have on your mind because
Yeah.
I'm not going to know about
Oh
it
my
if you
goodness.
don't vocalize what is going on.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
Communication is big. I don't know how
I
big it is to you, but it is very big
It
to
is.
my life.
I agree. I agree with you, and I think that's something, especially as guys, we can relate to because we tend to be more of the direct type usually, and we don't like to have to figure out the Millennium Puzzle just to know what you want to say. But I think one of the reasons why it's big to me too is because I'm a very deep carer, if I can use that phrase. Like, so if I have a relative or if I have a friend or if I have people in my life, I'm a very very I care a lot about what you have to say. And I even talked to somebody the other day about how when I was younger, of course, you know, growing up as kids, we often we sometimes you're at odds with your parents about different things. And so I remember I told my mom one time, I said, I genuinely want to know what I did wrong. Because if I can, in my particular case, or in this example,
hmm
I felt justified. I felt like my perspective was right and I wasn't really being understood. So my intent was to get to an understanding more than to get a point. You see what I'm saying? So that's
Okay,
why
yeah.
I'm trying to say, like, for communication, I really don't like having conversation with people that don't want to get to that middle ground. I mean, have you had a conversation with somebody where, or an argument, for example, where you can tell they don't really want to understand you, they just want to dominate the conversation? You see what I'm saying?
I've been in conversations like that. As of actually recently, as of last week, I was on the phone with a a sister from church that we know. I
Yeah.
won't say no names, but like
Okay.
we was just communicating,
Yeah.
and I had something to say to her,
Yeah.
but it wasn't expedient for me to make that point that I
Right.
needed to say to her. So I
Right.
just waited for her to reach out to me, and
Right.
whenever she reached out to me, I got her, so to say.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I said what I needed to say, and
Right.
she said, "You're bad at communicating." But it's a different perspective because,
Right.
as I mentioned, not everything is expedient for in
Yeah.
terms of communication. So even though I may have something to say to somebody, I can wait
Yeah.
because I'll think about, do I need to say it now? Is it something that I need to say now?
Right.
Or is it just something that I need to express to them
Mm-hmm.
what they may have done?
Okay.
But when that opportunity comes to say it, I'll
Right.
be able to say it. It's not that not everything needs to be said right away. I think that being able to think about what is going to be said
Mm-hmm.
um, is needed.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you get in those predicaments to where you think about what's going to be said.
Yeah.
The opportunity shows itself, and
Yeah.
that anxiety kills that momentum
Yes.
because
Yeah.
now your heart is starting to
Right.
pound, and
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh man, I feel sick to my
Right.
stomach. The
Right.
person's right there that I need to talk
Need to
to,
talk to. Yeah.
is right there,
Yeah.
and now I may just back off
Right.
because of that anxiety that we may
Yeah.
get from it. Um, but in terms of being able to understand what someone's trying to say
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just speaking, I had to even tell the sister, like, hey, let me talk. Like, you're putting things in
Yeah.
my mouth that I didn't even say.
Yeah.
So, and I
Yeah.
was like, you're making me put some bass behind my voice. Let me talk a little bit. But I was able to
Right.
say what I
Right.
needed to say, and
Yeah.
I understand that. I'm at times, depending on what's being said,
Yeah.
I'm trying. No, I'm trying to get my point across.
Yeah.
I'm not really trying to hear what you got to say
Yeah.
because I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. That's the human part of us, I think. But I really do think that to your point when you said about like there's a time and place for everything, and sometimes you got to withhold an opinion or a thought and then wait for the right opportunity to strike. I do agree with that because you have to have tact, especially for example, like if I'm coming to you and I'm saying, I feel really, really stressed out about X, Y, and Z. Maybe that's not the right time to tell me, well, you should be stronger than that. Right?
Yeah,
Maybe and
yeah,
even for example, we are people of faith, right? And this is something I often talk to some of my friends about as well, where sometimes telling a person just pray about it isn't the right time for that. And that's something that's a big boy, big girl conversation, right? Because some people don't understand what that means, but sometimes you have to just listen. Sometimes you have to offer advice, and sometimes you have to ask the person, what do you need from me? But there's a lot of people sometimes when you talk to them, all that's rolling through their mind is, tell you what's right or tell you what to do instead of figuring out what's the dynamic that this is and what kind of communication are they needing from me at this moment. Another example, if you came to me and said, hey bro, um I'm really struggling with X, Y, and Z, and I'm not sure how to move forward. um Maybe if I know you a certain type of way, I can offer my support in specific ways instead of just say, well, just pray, bro. You see what I'm saying? So maybe you can get a little bit further by some actions that I can offer to you. Or I can ask you, hey, do you need me to help you stay accountable? For example, right? So I think about that when it comes to communication. And this is why you have to figure out for yourself who is in your life and that dynamic, right? Because sometimes we cause our own demise by trusting the wrong kind of people with communication. So, yeah, you will find yourself suffering more sometimes when you're going through things if you're talking to the wrong people about it because you could be getting more solid support in that conversation from different people. You see what I'm saying? So, that's just how I've experienced it and
think
how I felt
about
about it.
being able to voice something that has been on your heart
Yeah.
for a while, and then you finally go to that person. Well, depending on who the person
Right.
is.
Right.
And then you choose the wrong one and
Right.
they say, go
That's
pray about it. And it's just
that's my
like,
point.
I mustered up all this strength to
Exactly.
be able to say what I needed to say. And it's not that
Right.
I may have needed your advice, but I
Yeah.
needed someone that I could trust, that I could go to and be able to speak on what I had to say.
Right.
I needed that listening ear.
Yeah.
And then if you had something wise to say, as
Yeah.
opposed to just go pray about it, because
Right.
obviously I could have
That's
done that without even going to you.
right.
I really needed your support at that time
Yeah.
to be able to hear what I needed to say, um, because it's really bothering me.
Mhm.
Uh,
And sometimes just to say like a simple response like, I understand what you're going through, or
Something soft
or
that,
or like, you're not alone in this. Those things have been said to me and have given me so much strength. So, yeah.
as opposed to being told go pray about it,
Yeah.
hearing something soft like that
Yeah.
is what people may need at the time.
Exactly.
Just depending the person, being able to communicate with people in general.
Mhm.
Not every situation is going to be the same.
Right.
Not everybody is direct.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
You got to fish sometimes out of some
for
folks.
sure. And, I can respect the people that do voice their opinion.
Mhm.
Um, and with having communication, setting up boundaries.
Right.
When you set up boundaries, that's great. I think
Yeah.
being able to communicate that is needed.
Yeah.
But people also being aware of what they're saying as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Not being tone deaf.
And not being tone deaf. I'll try to cut out those ums. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
But to excuse me, I'm
No, you're
sorry. I
good.
almost
You're
I
good.
just lost my train of
You're
thought right
good.
there.
No, you're talking about like, oh, it sounded like you were talking about not just saying anything that comes to mind and being considerate as to like what you say and how you
Yes.
say it, because that's what we're talking about, being
Being
tone
aware.
deaf, being aware,
Being aware.
self-awareness. Like for one thing I always one thing I learned growing up is that if we go out together or if we're going somewhere and you see like, my fly is down or something needs to be fixed, like maybe don't call me out in front of everybody, right?
Mhm.
Maybe pull me aside and say, hey, like, be discreet about things because you care about how the person may feel.
I'll communicate with hands.
Right, right, right,
You can use gestures to communicate as well. So if I
right,
see
right.
someone having, let's say, because we went out and your fly may be down or something
Yeah,
like that,
yeah.
or you have something in your teeth
Right,
or on your nose, anything
right.
on the face, I'll be like,
Exactly. Or your breath. No, but seriously, and a part of that is care, right? A lot of
Mhm.
times we go the extra mile for people that we care about. This kind of ties into one of the first podcasts I did with Esther. Hey Esther. When we talked about friendship, because it's a real thing where oftentimes we all of a sudden find the tact when it comes to the people we care about. We all of a sudden are more careful to not hurt people's feelings when it's someone that we like, or when it's someone like I was talking to Sam with that you find attractive. A lot of times we start to turn on our sensitivity that is everybody deserves that. And this is what my podcast is trying to demonstrate to people subtly, if I can, that to his point, there's no person that's so unique or so special to you and your experience that you should just uh forget all the elements of tact when it comes to communication. I mean, of course, like one thing that I remember when I would, if I'm out in the bus or the train and I see somebody, that I could tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, you dropped something, or hey, just, make sure you do that. I do that.
Mhm.
And I still use tact because if you see somebody, their bag is open, for example. I remember one time I was in the train and I got off the train, I got to work and my bag was open. I'm like, you mean to tell me nobody tapped me on the back and said, hey, close, your bag is open? Like, it's things like that but if I was somebody's friend in the train, they probably would have tapped me because they felt more comfortable to communicate, which kind of
That might be a more of a like societal thing that
that's
people
yeah,
don't have that great of a communication
right,
tactic or
right,
skill.
broader.
Communication is really a skill.
It is.
Being able to not be introvert at times and
Yes,
being extrovert, uh,
yes,
you have to find a balance because
yes,
there's nothing wrong with being introverted.
right,
You can be introverted all you want,
yes,
but you're going to have to deal with people, and communication is
exactly,
big when dealing with people.
exactly,
Everyone is different with how they communicate, and
right,
you do have to learn that skill with how to go about
right.
communicating things with people.
Mm-hmm.
I was just in a conversation of getting close to a month ago,
Mm-hmm.
and the person was coming at me and telling me that what I was saying was making them feel uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
to where like, okay, I understand that what I may have said made you feel uncomfortable, but
Mm-hmm.
I've always been like
Direct.
clear, direct on what was said or who had either said it, and
I
I was
see.
just relaying the message to you.
I see.
So to being able to have that
Right.
type of communication to where the person and the individual,
Mm-hmm.
I laid out, okay, you're coming at me with what I did wrong.
Mm.
And that is completely fine. You can set up these boundaries as
Right.
we said that you could do.
Right.
But here's things that you've done.
Mm.
And they're like, why didn't you bring these up to my attention
Mm.
whenever they were said? I'm a guy. So like I notice what's being said. I'm
Right.
observant,
Observing. Yeah.
but not everything is expedient to be had in that conversation.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
if it's men, we bros. If it's
Yeah.
women, it's a little bit different.
Yeah. I get it.
I'm not going to tell a woman, "Hey, this is what you said." And it made me feel uncomfortable because I think that is so weird
Really?
I think that depending on
Who it
depending on
is?
who it is
Yeah.
or what may have been said,
Yeah.
I'm not just going to be like, "Hey sis, that made me feel uncomfortable."
Mm-hmm.
To have them say tell them to have them say sorry. I just think that is so,
Really?
for me, like
Okay.
I'm not
Okay.
gonna have until a conversation is had to where,
Okay.
okay, you're telling me what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying
Mm-hmm.
is making you feel uncomfortable. Okay, these are things that you have said. Where is your awareness in your words? Because
Mm.
I had to be aware of what I've been saying,
Gotcha.
and being aware of what you're saying. This is what you've done, X,
Mm-hmm.
Y, and Z,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to express that to an individual,
Mm-hmm.
them to consider what you have said, reflect, and then they come back and say, I'm sorry. I've never had someone say thank you for telling me
Right.
what
Right.
I said. I'm like, that's different.
Yeah.
That is appreciative of
Yeah.
an individual to reflect, to take in what someone may have said,
Yeah.
and then come back and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I
That is appreciative.
it definitely takes a lot of humility, you know what I'm saying, to be able to have that dialogue. And I guess I'm curious because, and this is why I really enjoy having conversation because when you mentioned about like you know, like certain things, you know, like I agree with you in the aspect of if I'm talking to somebody that I'm not too familiar with or and whatnot, you're not gonna pick apart every little thing. You know, some things you just have to drop it. You know what I'm saying? That's where the maturity level comes into. I guess I'm just a little bit different because I'm a very direct person, but I don't know. I guess to your point, I like whether you're a sister or not. Well, more so for me, I if I read that you have a very opposing and a very how do I say, you know, those people that are ready to go off for every little thing.
Brothers are different, man. Like
Uh, well,
there are like there have been experiences to where I have set boundaries with an
yeah,
individual or
mhm,
individuals
mhm,
because you may be a certain way
yeah,
and how you communicate
mhm,
with me. Like I'm not I'm not either your sibling. Um I'm I'm
right, I
someone
get
that
it,
you're still getting to
right,
know. So
yeah,
like
yeah,
however you communicate
right,
with those that are close to
right,
you, I'm not them.
right, right. Right. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if you're not aware or mindful of how you're talking to others,
Yeah.
I'm a very respectful person. So
Mhm.
like I just cannot stand people that try to exert themselves
Yeah,
over someone
I know.
through speech. And it's just like, hold
Right.
up. We gonna put a stop to that because I'm not necessarily
Yeah,
going to speak to you in
right.
the same manner that how you're speaking to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you on that, and my version of that is I just don't speak to you. I mean, I just because for Elijah's world of my version of that is I don't. I just for example, I have the experience where when I meet brothers and whatnot, that I can tell whether our communication styles is a good match, and that doesn't mean I start avoiding you, but I don't have the interest to deliberately engage because to you, what you were saying earlier about the introvert extroverted thing, I'm 26. I'm getting too grown for to have to pull conversations out of you. So personally speaking, that's why, I try to I enjoy, let's just put it that way. I would rather have conversations with somebody that I can equally balance that off of versus have to pry it out of you. And to your point, you still have to learn each other's communication styles and things like that. But I wanted to that made me think of texting versus calling specifically. What is your preferred method?
I'm old school. I'm going face to face,
Face to face? I said call or
person to
text.
person. I know you
I
said,
didn't say take a
but
boat.
I'm gonna get there. But call.
Call.
You can hear my voice and the tone because whenever you're texting,
Yeah.
you know how many thoughts come to my mind, how I'm trying to interpret how they said
Right.
something.
Yeah.
How fair is that for me? Now I'm
Yeah.
upset with what you said to me because I'm interpreting what you said over a text message.
Yeah. Because
I
yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm with you on that. Honestly, we're the same way with that. Because I like to do emojis and stuff, but I always feel the need to put like emojis and exclamation points and periods and commas just to make sure like the tone is heard properly. But I agree with you. I think that calling is a bit better and it's faster. But what we were saying earlier, I want to say this to everybody that's watching because I like to talk to y'all too. I really want you to make sure that if you are more so of the introverted type, that I know a lot of you are out there that prefer texting, because I know people that do. Um, Not that you have to be different or be like him and I. Um, Ask yourself why. Um, Before there was texting, if you lived in a world where you had to call or you had to talk to people directly, you'd be out of commission. Because to be able to talk and express your thoughts, in a more organic sense, is a skill that you should strive for. I always like to make sure I'm not teeter tottering on that line of setting some sort of standard, because everybody is unique and everybody has their own individual personalities. But I don't think as you age, certain things you should be content with, which is like you should be able to sit into a room with people and simply have a conversation or be able to introduce yourself. So these are things I think that sometimes social media and current culture, they kind of normalize personality traits like some sort of aesthetic. For example, they every extrovert is psycho, crazy, loud, and every introvert is mysterious and cool. And I've even seen content when these guys will post different things on Instagram. Well, they'll say, lock in for 6 months, lose all your friends, block everybody, put a black screen on your profile picture, just disappear, as if you could have just said, discipline yourself, right?
Yeah.
You didn't have to create this whole aesthetic for people to try to achieve, to feel like they're different, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, do you think that that is something that people should try to develop out of? Or do you think that, you know, being a super introvert that doesn't, you don't have to have those type of skills to,
Think about the experiences that you can make by having a conversation with somebody,
yeah,
as opposed to, you know, it's nice to be able to talk to someone
yeah,
on your phone,
right.
and have their number, but like
Mm-hmm.
I'm more of an experience based type of person. I
Mm-hmm.
don't really try to get into my feelings,
Right.
as opposed to um I like to think about the experience with an individual.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can reflect on how did that experience make me feel, but
Right.
I'm not going to look at, well, this conversation made me feel a certain way. I'm
Mm.
thinking about this conversation made me experience
I
a
see.
feeling.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it
Stimulating.
kind of sounds the
I
same,
get
but
what you're
like
saying.
I
It's more
I'm
stimulating a
it
little bit.
it is, because experiences are going to, excuse me, experiences are going to give you a lot more information than opposed
Mm.
to a feeling, because a feeling comes from the heart, and we
Mm.
knowing how the heart is, it can
Yeah.
be desperately wicked,
Yeah.
it can be deceitful,
Right.
but
Right.
those experiences, what with having communication
Right.
and experiencing an experience,
Right.
that experience can tell you so much more than a
Mm.
feeling.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. I agree. I think that's the essence of that prompt, right? Is that we don't want to ever lose the beauty of natural organic experience over like a boost of, is it endorphin, you know, that thing that they say that you get especially when you scroll and things like that, you know,
Dopamine,
yeah,
maybe.
dopamine, excuse me.
Uh,
Those are the two forces at war now, where we have the lived experience, and then you have the addiction to dopamine, or endorphin, whatever, that is at war, you know, where it's difficult because it's easy to get addicted to that instant gratification, and that, like, there's some people that they can text multiple people at the same time and keep up with the conversations, and it's just constantly stimulating like that.
Think about the feeling that you start developing towards somebody
Mm-hmm.
through text message,
Mm.
and you're not really getting to know how they're saying what they're saying through the tone of their voice
Right.
in person,
Right.
as opposed to this text message, to
Right.
where now you're starting to develop something that may not even be
Accurate.
accurate,
Right.
necessary,
That's
because
true.
you're interpreting things
Yeah.
differently. But if you were to have these communications and develop your communication skills with people and
Mm-hmm.
speak to them person to person,
Right.
you know, I respect old school so much, to where you had to approach people.
Yeah.
You had to literally be
Yeah.
right there in front of them, no
The
matter
back and
how
forth.
nervous you may have been.
Right.
You have to say those things face to face. And the phone, I think, has just
Ugh.
taken all that away.
Yeah.
Uh,
I agree.
Texting is just you know, we
Yeah.
get so lazy to
I
text
know.
message. I may
Yeah.
say what, WAT,
Yeah.
like what, like
Yeah.
how lazy has
Yeah.
texting
Yeah.
been, and it's
Yeah.
been a detriment to communication
Right.
skills.
Right. And to your point, you know, I just want to wrap up this section of the conversation. One thing I want to let you know is that you can both understand the reality you live in and also be a victim of it. You see what I'm saying? You can understand both. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he probably won't watch this because he don't watch. He's one of those people that, you know, he's my homeboy, but he don't watch nothing. So what him and I talked about was, or I'll say this. He mentioned to me, he called me out. I was being a bad friend at this particular instance because I'm human. Surprise, surprise, y'all. But he said, you know, this is what you expressed to me that you want in a friendship, but this is what you did. And I said, you know what? You're right.
I
And
respect people like that.
I do. And I told him, though, what I'd never told you was I was perfect. And I told him I have every right to have expectations that I myself have to uphold, right? So to make that small demonstration, it's important to be cognizant of these dynamics, right? Like, I myself get lazy and just put a LOL just to, you know, just to stimulate the conversation when it's really not authentically how I feel and stuff like that. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing per se, but it's not something that I'm okay with. You see what I'm saying? Like, I aspire to achieve more natural, organic experiences. So whenever I have time off and whenever I can see my friends in person, or have those tangible experiences, I try to take advantage of it. And just like how a lot of times when we need to be disciplined and reach our goals, we're scrolling, and we could be doing other things. So
And I
yeah.
know you wanted to close
No, you're
into,
good. Go ahead.
but to work on your communication skills, just say hi to somebody, even if you're
Yeah.
an introvert, even
Yeah.
if they don't say hi back to you.
And
A
smile.
simple hi and a smile
And a
can go a
smile.
long way.
I think
It,
yeah.
and it helps you because
Yeah.
now I've already said hi to somebody.
Yeah.
I can say hi to the next person.
Yeah.
You know, uh,
No,
I
go
was
ahead.
a cashier at Target,
Ooh.
and you know how Target brings
Ooh.
in
That's
the demographic of people. You're gonna
yes.
have women,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but how I looked at it and this was whenever I was like young, like
Mm.
probably mid 20s,
Mm-hmm.
while I was working at Target. But if these attractive looking women came through my line, if I could speak to them and have a conversation with
Mm-hmm.
them by being able to have eye contact, I can
Mm.
take that outside of the work environment
Yeah.
and do
I
that
see.
in my personal life to where I can approach whoever it is,
I
male or
see.
female,
Right.
and be able to have that eye
That
contact
confidence.
and that
Yeah.
confidence in myself
That's
and
good.
having communication.
That's good. That's good. And that's a really good strategy. And it's kind of smart how you used your real life experience to see how it could build yourself outside of that. So
I
that's a
really, I really did that.
well, look at you go. I know that's
I
right.
appreciate it.
Well, this because this is just our conversational platform here. I want to shift gears to our next subject that I had jotted down. Now, the long-term and broad-term effects of overzealousness. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this, and y'all might be like, did a 90-degree turn, but just go with me on this. And this portion is dedicated to all my church kids. Okay, so this is specifically for that. I don't often have that kind of dialogue on my platform specifically, and I do that intentionally because I think everybody has their lane, and religious discourse is not what I do on this platform, but of course, not to plug my music, I do Christian music and things like that. So if you
Go
get the
ahead,
chance to
plug
check it
yourself,
out,
man.
definitely do that. New single, came out, but I want to talk about that because I know we have different background as far as church and things like that, but I personally have had a relationship with overzealousness and external relationship. And so what I'll say is, growing up in church, I traveled a lot, went to different types of churches, met different types of people, and I found that it was the most destructive thing that I have run into. And I have been made to feel like I was delusional about it. And what I mean by that is, when you grow up around overzealous things and you grow up around overzealous people, oftentimes they try to demonize you to make you feel like, because you're not like us, you're very, very worldly and you're very, very ungodly. So they like to create a contrast between you and them. This is my personal experience now. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because I know there's people that are going through my lived experience that do not, and my previous lived experience, that do not have anybody to affirm their lived experience and to connect with them. So this is for you specifically. One of the long-term negative effects of that kind of behavior is you end up becoming something that is self-destructive. And going back to communication, that's really, really relevant because, for example, if the one person that you trust is overzealous, whether they're in your home, whether they're your friend, whether they're your leader, whatever it may be, there is no possible way for you to actually develop a safe space. There's no possible way for you to develop trust. There's no possible way for you to actually mature out of whatever it is that you're struggling with, because they won't have the proper advice for you in those instances. And one of the things I try to do, Seth.
They're gonna tell you, go pray about it.
Yeah, they will do that. They'll do that. That's a default, you know. But one of the things I've learned from that experience is when it comes to the people that I know, the people that I'm close to, the people that I care about, I try to let them know that at least when they come to me about it, I'm not going to dismiss their experience. I'm also not going to be imbalanced, because you have to pray for people that you care about. You have to make sure that you're a good, positive spiritual influence at all. But to bring you into this conversation, why do you think a person may not see that in themselves if they're overzealous? And have you experienced that internally or externally? I'm talking about from yourself or from another place. And what has that been like for you?
I got two stories.
Okay.
One was whenever I first was coming from Missouri to New Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
and being introduced to the faith, being introduced to something that you're new to and you're excited about.
Yeah.
My dad likes to drink.
Mm-hmm.
That's on him. I don't really care. But I was so zealous.
Mm-hmm.
So I told him, this rent money, that I'm giving you. And you know how much of a blessing that it was for him to even take me in. Like,
Right.
even though he's my dad,
Right.
like, he never was my dad. Like, and I don't mean that
Father figure.
yeah, he was never my father figure. I was adopted. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
me being 27 at the time, like, what are you gonna say? Like, what are
Yeah.
you gonna say? I'm your son, but like,
Right.
I'm not really your son.
Yeah. There's no relationship.
No relationship at all. So me coming in to his house
Mm-hmm.
under his roof,
Yes.
I told him, I'm like, hey, if I find out
Mm-hmm.
that you're going to buy alcohol with this money I'm giving you for rent,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to give you any rent money. And you know
Mm-hmm.
how silly that is to say
Yeah.
to somebody that is allowing you to come in under their roof,
Mm-hmm.
who didn't have to do that.
Right.
That is moving
Yeah.
too fast.
Yeah. I
Not,
can see that.
The second story is as actually talking to someone late last year, and they were just referencing so much scripture in our conversation, and I have no problem with
Yeah.
people doing that.
Right.
But as you and I have had many
Yes.
conversations,
We have.
not to say our conversations are not like
No.
worldly or anything like that, but
No.
we're not saying,
We're just regular dudes.
we're just down to
We're just
earth
regular
talking to
brothers.
one another. And
Yeah.
just that big old sigh was just how I felt with talking with the individual, and
Mm.
nothing against them, but I
Right.
was exhausted from the conversation.
They say you warm out.
It really did. I don't know if
What?
people are able to see that until they are really self-reflecting on
Mm-hmm.
themselves. Whenever you have self-reflection,
Right.
you're able to slow
That's a
down,
good point.
and you can stand still. There's nothing wrong with standing still.
Yeah. Yeah.
Having that self-reflection allows you to be able to see how fast you're moving,
Mm.
where you're moving,
Yeah.
but you also have to be truthful
Right.
when you're doing this self-reflection,
Mm-hmm.
because if you're not being truthful with yourself, you're just putting up a lie, and that lie
Right.
can blind you.
Right.
So where you don't see where
Yeah.
you're going or how fast you
Yeah.
are, long-term effects, you may have started out having a passion for something, but after a long time, after a
Mm-hmm.
while passes, you start to lose that passion.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you get to a certain point and you reflect and you start to think, oh, I have to start over.
Right.
You look at all that work that
Mm-hmm.
you just put in, and you're like, I have to do my first works over again.
Right.
And you've lost that passion
The
for
momentum.
that momentum, that
Yeah.
passion that you was just doing. It makes someone turn away. It
Mm.
makes someone not want to resume,
Right. It's
continue.
harder to pick yourself back up after that big crash.
It is a big crash
Yeah.
because you're looking at what you have to start over and
Right.
all the work that you put in,
Right.
as opposed to just being, all right, I did this,
Right.
and learning from that experience
Right.
and being able to, there's nothing wrong to do something over again and making sure that you do it right.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not sound in something
Right.
and you weren't able to do it right the first time, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to go on to the next thing and the next thing and then the next thing.
Right.
And you're going to start wondering, why aren't I accomplishing anything that I
Mm-hmm.
want to do?
Absolutely.
And I'm telling people while I'm doing it, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm
Right.
going to do this, I'm going to be
Right.
that. And then when your works are evaluated,
Mm-hmm.
you see that you don't have anything done because
Right.
you was just so zealous about the thing. And there's nothing wrong having passion about
Mm-hmm.
what you're wanting to do,
Right.
but being able to do it right. I look at a marathon,
Mm-hmm.
and those that run a marathon, they know when to pick up their pace.
Yeah.
They know when to slow it down and
Exactly.
conserve their
To keep the
energy.
stamina going.
There's nothing wrong with running with the crowd as well,
Right.
but you're not trying to keep up with anybody
Right.
around you.
Yeah, that, and I'm so glad you mentioned that because you actually thoroughly answered my question about the long-term and broader term effects of it. Because, for me, I have my own spiritual goals. You have your own spiritual goals. And one of the things I personally have experienced is that when I started to self-examine myself and how fast I'm going, and I slowed myself down and I started giving myself more grace, to your point about not having that crash so hard. um I make more progress. What people may not know about me is years ago I was that guy on YouTube trying to preach to folk and stuff like that. I had that. So when people like me come across brothers or sisters, I can see it instantly. And I meet a lot of really good people, very nice people. But
For
in
sure.
my mind, when we're talking, I'm just like, I just wish you would just calm down some more, because I know how much of that I can take. And if, for example, if I can dabble into this a little bit with music, oh, bruh, like I'm telling you, I don't know, music is not probably not your lane, like similar to me necessarily, but what I can say is if I had connected with the wrong people,
Hmm.
um, all my music would sound identical. None of it would be authentically representative of my personal style, because I have, over the years, when you run into people that are overzealous or you are like that yourself, you limit yourself in so many different ways, and you're not able to see clearly the bigger picture about how, like, for example, when you say things like be yourself, right? So a person that, if you don't lower or reel in your zeal, you will think, well, why would I be myself? I'm supposed to be what God say. Well, that's the point, right? Is if you're able to take that pace slower, you can hear be yourself as figure out what makes you special and what God put in you. That's what that means. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And so this is why I want you all to know that that's why I work so hard to rehearse to you, be yourself, find what makes you authentic, because that's what will make you shine the brightest, and that actually is how you will grow spiritually. A lot, for example, I grew up in where we go now. I grew up in church, but I went to different churches in the past, and it's the same song and dance that I've heard, where if you're so enthusiastic to make the declarations about, oh, I'm going to stay here till I die, and all those types of things, actions speak louder than words. And the ironic part of it always is the people that I meet, including, thankfully, I've been blessed to get to this point, that slow their pace down, that are very, very down to earth to talk to, they're
That's the
the
key.
ones that stick around the longest.
Hmm.
That's been my experience. And that's why I often talk to my sister and my mom. I say, no matter what I see change, no matter what happens, no matter the bad and the good news, I always want to maintain the pace that I'm on, because, that's what's showing me that the longevity, and I want to say, if you're out, I wanted to make sure I touched on this too. If you're a young boy, a young girl, or you're in a family dynamic where you are enthralled by, I'm just gonna keep it 100. If you have parents that are overzealous, this is I know you don't get a lot of shine in conversation, but I want to make sure that you are you get to see yourself, because it's difficult for a lot of young people to be in a home where they have very, very overzealous parents that make them feel like they can't do anything but read the Bible and sit at home and pray. And that you have to be aware
Yeah.
that that may be what you have to deal with, because you can't control the family you're born into. And that is something that's ironic, because if you it's a very difficult thing, Seth, and it's a very important conversation, because so so many kids run away from church.
Yeah.
So many kids, they develop a hatred for church and for God and for their faith, because of the bad demonstrations they have from the adults around them,
Yeah.
from the church folk they run into. And I'm getting a little passionate, because I truly, not because I just like to throw off, and not because I don't know how to use wisdom in my platform, because it is very, very essential that we not stay quiet and just let things go on and not bring things to the surface. This is what my platform is trying to do.
Yeah. I actually grew up with a neighbor uh who was so overzealous,
Mm.
but what just the principles itself, she was right.
Hmm.
Like, she did not allow us to be a kid. And I believe, and I'm not even a parent, but I believe in allowing kid have.
Yeah.
Okay.
You good?
Um,
Hmm.
I believe in allowing a kid to be a kid, and she did not. So I remember vividly at times to where I was playing Rugrats on the PlayStation,
Hmm.
and I was their toy, the dinosaur at one point, and I was going around stomping the town as the dinosaur. And she was just like, she came in and she was just like, that is so wrong. Now I'm paraphrasing, but she was
Yeah.
just like, that's so wrong how the dinosaur is going around destroying the town. You know, we should probably turn that off and do
What?
something else. She had us there was another example to where she had us come over because our parents were gone, so she was watching over us.
Yeah.
Again, principles were right.
Right.
She believed in the Holy Ghost.
Uh-huh.
She had us sit at the table speaking tongues. So Tom, Jerry, salad, tomato, like all those things, like
Jibber
just
jabber.
jibber jabber is where I'm getting at by saying all
Uh-huh.
that. The principles, right. But growing up under
The
that,
demonstrations
I
is,
did not enjoy her being our babysitter because it
yeah.
was exhausting.
Yeah.
And me not even being in the church like that,
Right.
though my parents did take us to church, mainly
Right.
my mom, I was exhausted
Yeah.
of her being my neighbor.
Mm.
Did not
Do you
enjoy being around that.
did you think that did that give you a negative connotation of church?
No,
Or
it didn't.
okay.
It didn't give me a negative connotation to church. It gave me a negative connotation towards her.
Her.
Like, I did not want
He
her
said, "You weird."
I did not want her to be my babysitter.
I get that.
Just because she was not allowing me to be a
Yeah.
kid.
Oh, so uptight. Yeah.
Very, very strict.
Yeah.
Like those parents, all you can do is read the Bible and then nothing else.
Yeah. And to kind of extend to that point, Seth, and it's even as a child you experience that, and can you imagine, so many people have that experience times 10, right? Where they are they can't even talk to their family or their relatives about deep things like we were talking about earlier, because if you're a parent and you don't understand, and often this is why I say too, if your child doesn't feel safe to come to you about anything, you're doing it wrong. I don't
Most
care. I
definitely.
don't care. Like, I genuinely, you can provide all the things that your child needs naturally. All of it means nothing if your child does not know that whatever I bring to you is a safe space. Do you see what I'm saying? And real
I
fast.
had this young
Mhm.
lady. Uh, I was in a three-way accident not too long
Wow.
ago, which totaled out my car.
Mm.
But to use that as an example,
Mm-hmm.
she called her boyfriend,
Mm.
18 years old,
Mm.
and you call, well, a boy that is a friend, not even, because the
Yeah.
boy and I were
Right.
communicating, and I
Mm.
said, "That's your girlfriend?" He goes, "We're not even
And
dating." what made me so upset about this young lady is
Yeah.
that me preferably, I would rather communicate what I did to my parents
Right.
and have them angry at me, but
Right.
still receive their help.
Right.
But you got to have the right set of
The
parents.
right set of parents.
Because
Yeah.
I understand why kids may not want to go to their parents because they may not be receiving the information that they
Yeah.
need at that time. I had a dad, and I'm not saying
Yeah.
anything negative against
Sure.
him, but he was just a pair of britches at home. I really wish that my dad
Right.
taught me things growing up,
Mhm.
but he wasn't progressive in wanting to learn. And I
Right.
asked him before he passed away, I said,
Mhm.
why didn't you teach me these things? And he thought about it, and I respected his answer. He
Mhm.
goes, you know, my dad didn't teach me these
Right.
things.
That's how it is. That's how it is. Yeah.
Got to be very careful with what you observe because you can learn from the good and the bad.
Mhm.
Not trying to attack anyone that is a parent.
No.
Not at all, because I am not a parent myself, so
Right.
I can't really speak to be in that
No.
type of situation.
That's true.
But you want to pass down knowledge, and you want to pass down the right
Absolutely.
knowledge to your family,
Absolutely right.
to the next generation.
Absolutely.
Depending on what's being said and passed down, you
Right.
could either hurt somebody
Yeah.
or you can help them,
Yeah.
and you can help them grow by giving them the right example,
Right.
giving them what they really need.
Right.
Or
Mhm. Mhm.
if you're just that overzealous and you're not
Yeah.
self aware of what you're doing, you're
Right.
going to kill the progress
Right.
of somebody before it
Even had-
even flourishes or takes
Yeah.
root.
Yeah. And that's I'm so glad you mentioned that. And I appreciate you being transparent like that, because one thing I try to encourage people that I have on is that this is not just for you. And the last thing I want to do is have conversations with people that that can't see that they can help other people with their lived experience, because I'm sure somebody can relate to that. And to your point, that's why I wanted to stress that you may think a lot of times, let me give you a little ingredient and then we're going to move on because we're running out of time. Is if you want to know, Elijah, well, how do I know if I am? Because I don't think I am overzealous. Well, ask yourself this: do you overthink? Are you? Do you have it? Are you able to express yourself? Are you able to express the thoughts that you have? Um, do you hear different things from your children? Like, are you able to have a broad uh, sense of communication, and not like leave things off the table? For example, like, if even if what you have to say could be said better, you should at least let your child or let your friend communicate it, and then you fixed it as it later on, because you can't help a person if you don't know what you're working with. And what I also want to mention with the overzealous thing is that you won't make the progress that you think you want to make if you don't actually take a stock to your actual current state. You see what I'm saying? And that's why it's such an important conversation, because you will find yourself easily manipulated if you're overzealous, and you will find yourself trusting people that you shouldn't trust. So it's a lot more negative than people really realize it. And oftentimes when this conversation comes to the forefront, people get very quiet because most people don't like to do self work, right? It's easier to clap your hands and to say yeah, yeah, yeah when it comes to pointing out other people's flaws and other people's sins and other people's issues. But when it takes time to take a roll call as to what you got going on here,
You know what we call that? Accountability.
accountability.
You-
Exactly.
We sh- I, we stray away from
We do.
accountability.
We do.
That's the truth.
It's easy to, right?
Especially in a time that we live in now, in a generation that we're
Yeah.
in, no one is taking accountability
Right.
unless you're a real person
Unless you're grown and mature,
and
right?
mature, being a real person. And how
Yeah.
many real people are we able to come across?
Man, it's rare.
I was in a conversation last week with an individual that said that they love being around overzealous people. And I'm
Were they
like,
joking? That was a joke, right?
I'll tell you, because we know the person, so I'll tell
Okay.
you who it was after this. But
Okay.
like,
They were joking though, right?
I hope so.
Oh.
But I think she was. I think she was too.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I forgot why she said that she enjoyed being around overzealous people,
Yeah. What did
but
you
you
think?
have to be aware of who you're around because that type of communication,
Oh yeah.
it can corrupt. It can,
Listen, was it a she? You said
yeah.
if you were serious, God bless your soul, because that is a statement you're gonna wish you never said. Because I'm telling you, if you think you've met an overzealous person, you haven't met the right one. Because I promise you for a fact, Elijah Music can sit here as a witness that I have met many kinds, and there you will run into the right one that will turn you inside out for the worst. And that is something that you don't want to play with. I'm telling you for if we're gonna move to the next subject, but I didn't mean for it to take this turn, but I want to let you know if you do not if you're not able to identify someone that is overzealous and identify that in yourself, if that's the case, you will always find yourself a mess. And you come to an experience that you never thought you would experience. So just take it from me. You don't want to mess with that. So let me just pivot to this last point, okay? Support systems. Now, all of these conversations really, I wanted to tie it into that
Mhm.
because everybody don't have a support system that they can rely on.
No.
Whether this looks like a friend group, which is why I'm very, very against things like that. When it comes, I'm not, okay, let me rephrase that. I'm not against friend groups because you have your own lived world, right? And you have people that right? You can't be friends with everybody on the planet, right? That's
No.
not logical. But what
No.
I'm saying is I'm very against this sort of invite only mentality with the people that because you can be blocking many of your blessings by doing that. You have to be open to new relationships all the time. You should be open to that. But I have developed support systems of different kinds over the years that have been temporary. Some people, some people are meant to be in your life for a short while, and some people are meant to be long term, which is why I never take it personally when people choose to kind of ditch me. You know what I'm saying? There's plenty of people I've met in church and out that
Why I'm such a great person? Why would anyone want to ditch me?
I know. I mean, hey, you missing out, so do your
For
thing.
sure.
But that's something that I've internalized. I'm like, Elijah, if they don't choose you, that's okay. But as long as you prosper. So I want to ask you how how important do you think support systems are? And this is not just in church, but just in general. And what do you think they can look like? As far as that.
The last time I was on the podcast, I mentioned something about venting.
Yeah, you did. You did.
It is so good to be able to speak to people
Hmm.
that have common ground
Yeah.
on what it is that you're speaking about at that current time.
Mm.
I don't have like a support system.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that I don't have people at
Yeah,
all,
I get what you're
but
saying.
like I don't have like a group or
Accountability partners and things,
I have
or
I have people that I've come across in my life that I know who I can speak to.
I guess that, yeah.
So that could be a
Yeah,
sort of support system,
yeah.
but it's not anyone or any group. It's just through experience, having communication with people,
Mhm.
being real and knowing another person that is real with themselves
Mhm.
and accountable for with what is going on in their life.
Right.
Through those experiences and having communication, I've been able to realize or find the people that I can have down to earth
Yeah.
conversations with. I can be just a little bit more open,
Yes.
just a little bit more open with them
Right.
because I know that it's not going to get outside of that
Right.
conversation. But I also know who I told
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z too. I'm not just telling X, Y, and Z to everybody. So
Right.
like if it gets around, then I know who
Uh-huh.
it was,
Wow.
who it was. But that's another way. that's another way to find out if that
Mm-hmm.
person is going to be able to hold what that
Yeah.
information
Trustworthy. Yeah.
trustworthy, because
Yeah.
some information
Oh yeah.
is going to burst somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. If I can add on to that, you know, some of you may know my story too. Growing up, I was a little bit of a exiled one, where, you know, I was not really included in the conversations, not really included in the groups. Like, when we would team up in school for relay races and stuff, I was always like the last one, and I had to do it with the teacher. That's just kind of my story. But to that point, like, only in my recent years I had to learn that support systems look like different things, because in my mind, when it comes to support systems, I'm thinking, well, I have a team of people or a friend group that I can go to, and we can all have this big group chat where I can talk about, but that sometimes is not always the case. You know what I'm saying? Where there are certain brothers that I have been able to I can be transparent on the most rawest level, and it's solid. You know what I'm saying? It's beneficial for me. And that is like a support system. It's kind of like having an IV in different veins. You see what I'm saying? And that's why, and even to people that I can't be transparent like that with, there's still value there, right? So I may not be going to the nitty gritty of the things when it pertains to me and what I got going on, but it's still valuable just to have like a casual conversation, or sometimes when we do see each other, it's still friendly. You see what I'm saying? So yeah,
I just speaking with a couple brothers,
yeah,
and they're just a little bit younger than me, a little
mm-hmm.
bit younger than you too,
Okay,
but being able to, and I trust them,
yeah,
and I'm 31, and
yeah,
they're young
young, yeah,
20s,
it'd be like that,
but they're mature.
right, right. Can't trust everybody
It
that's
can't trust
older.
every, yeah, you can't trust everybody, but
Yeah.
being able to speak to them, they don't always give back
Mm-hmm.
information. They're listening,
Listening. Yeah.
and I may not always be wanting to have anything said. I just need to
Mm.
be able to talk to somebody that I can trust,
Right.
and be able to, I hold things in. So like there are times to where like I need somebody just to be an ear
Yeah.
to what it may be going on in my life.
Right.
But with these young men, I appreciated what he said because it's
Mm.
true. But I was sharing what it is that I may be going through at that time
Mm-hmm.
or moment in my life, and he said, "Don't think that I'm not listening." He goes,
Mm.
he was reflecting on his own experiences
Mm.
by what I was saying.
Right.
So sometimes being able to relay what you're going through in your own personal life may
Right.
be a support system to somebody
Yes.
that you're talking to, because
Yes.
they're able to reflect and maybe learn from what you're going through in
Yes.
your own life, in their
Yes.
own life.
Well said. That's masterfully put, because this is why I'm encouraging you that if you're super super isolated, if you're super super shy, you don't want to stay there, because what you were saying earlier, your development is locked up because you don't know how to express, and you may not have found that support system. But
That's right.
I've had that experience too, where I've learned more about myself just by talking. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh, that's why I think that.
And
That's why I
listening.
do that, because they're mastered. Some people are just awesome listeners, and that this is why you can't think you're better than anybody, whether you're introverted or extroverted, because there's extreme benefits that introverts need that you don't have as an extrovert, and vice versa. You see what I'm saying? So we can all kind of, some people talk too much, and they can learn from the introverts to just,
Mm,
all right, you don't have to talk all the time,
yeah.
versus people that are super introverted that, I won't know that you're in pain, and if you don't speak, right?
Yeah.
So it's an awesome thing. And for any of you out there that go the extra mile for your friends, especially to those who are willing to get up and go somewhere, because a lot of times, sometimes your friend do need you to get up out the bed on your weekend and come see about them. That is just, this is a little small portion of that, but I'm just pointing that out, because a lot of people, you have people that you call friends, and ask yourself, are they really a support system to you? And your experience is, you're not getting that. If you say, because you want to make sure you're evaluating all the dynamics of which you live. You want to evaluate, what kind of person am I? What is my communication style? Who are my support systems? Sometimes I pause myself and I think, who are people I can call friends? You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes we go so fast and we just start calling everybody friend, my brother, my this, my that. But when you really, sometimes I think to myself, wow, I didn't realize I have a friend in this person, because I have to pause and think about our relationship. And then sometimes I pause and I think, this person's not really my friend. You see what I'm saying? So you really do have to prioritize yourself. And in some moments, you have to be a little selfish and say, what are my support systems? And if you see that there's holes in the piping, now you have to start plugging everything up, right? And now you have to try to figure out, what is it that I need and how do I express that to them?
I like all the topics from conversation
Yeah.
to being zealous, needing to have that
Overzealous. Hey, two
overzealous,
different
but
things.
needing to be self-aware in what's
Right.
going on with yourself and those around you,
Right.
to having a support system, because they
Yeah.
all intricately tie
They
in
do.
with one another. Finding a support system
It's tough.
it is tough.
It's tough
It
work.
really is
It
tough.
takes time.
But with communicating,
Yes. Yes.
finding people that are real with themselves,
Right.
communication is
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, that is why it's big to me,
Yeah.
because it's ultimately going to play a part of how you find someone that's overzealous, how
Yes.
you find somebody that is going to be a support
Right.
system. Communication is part of life.
Right.
How do we get instructed or taught to do something?
Mm-hmm.
Someone has to communicate that to us.
Yeah.
Communication is always going to play a role in our lives,
Yeah.
and especially when finding a support system,
Yeah.
it is going to play an even bigger role, because who you tell someone what it is that you may be experiencing,
Yeah.
it could either hurt you
Yes.
because they're going off and be like, yo, you know what such and such just told me?
Yeah. And if I can just interject really fast to add to that, people oftentimes don't just tell your business, but they can also give you bad advice as well. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of like a double thing, where some people, they do have a big mouth and they start running, your business starts growing legs, right? But then sometimes people, they tell you really, really bad advice. Like they say, well, you know, some cases, and this is just my little philosophy, you're a man, so suck it up, right? They give you bad advice, or to your point, they start talking about your business to people. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I've been in conversations to where I'll literally tell people, that's some wise advice. I don't say that all the
no,
time, but whenever I hear wise advice,
right,
I'm gonna let them know, like, that's some
absolutely.
wise advice that you're giving, because
Hmm.
not all the time is wise advice given.
No, no,
And wisdom is person to person. It's not
hmm,
always held. Wisdom may be given,
right,
but it's not always held. There may be a leak or a crack in
mm,
that temple,
yeah,
that structure of a
that's
person,
true.
that they're not
They don't
holding.
catch everything.
They don't catch everything. It
Yeah,
may be a while before they
hmm,
hold on to it.
yeah,
So you can still learn from those people.
right,
You can just say to yourself, that's not anything
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
a take in, but you don't say
right.
that verbally to them.
Yeah, yeah. No,
But communicating,
hmm,
learning how to have that communication
right,
style, being able to know who to go to,
right,
listening by what is being said, but also learning about yourself by being able to speak on what it is that you're maybe experiencing at
yeah,
that time. Um, it really
yeah,
is going to be a person to person experience
right,
to be able to be comfortable, to have dialogue like
right.
this.
No, yeah. I want to say, to close out this wonderful conversation, you can't do it alone. If you think it makes you stronger to just tolerate everything by yourself, if you think it makes you stronger to try to figure everything out on your own, it doesn't. It makes you more of a man, and it takes a lot more out of you. It makes you more of a woman to be able to find out, how do I get the support I need, and how do I best communicate what I have to communicate to go higher. And I think that is something that a lot of people need to know, is that going inside, the shadows and trying to just not be a bother to anybody and things like that, this is how you self destruct. And I don't want you to normalize that, because we often don't have the aha moment to what I'm talking about until, God forbid, someone in our family jumps off a bridge. And now you're wondering, what movement can I join? Because now I'm socially aware that communication is important now. Now this podcast makes sense. And I personally don't want to have that experience where my friend, God forbid, harms themselves, because the whole time I thought they was fine. And I could have done better to communicate to them. You need to learn how to speak. You need to learn how to express and create those safe spaces. So yes, this was absolutely wonderful conversation, and I
It was.
appreciate that I was able to talk about this with
And
you.
thanks for having me
Yeah,
on.
of course, man. I really truly, I mean the best by what I do here. And if you really enjoyed this podcast, I really want you to comment down below, share it with the people that you know needed to hear this. Maybe you personally didn't know how to express or really put this into words, but I hope that this was something that you resonated with. Um, and I really, really appreciate those of you that have let me know that this is something that is enjoyable for you, because I honestly like to do music more than I talk, as much as you might not believe. But I think these are good to have, so I'm looking forward to doing more, Lord willing. So if you hadn't got the chance to check out my latest music, definitely do that. There's a playlist there. You can follow me on Instagram at Elijah Music. And do you have? I
No,
mean,
I don't have anything, but check
he's
out his last podcast too with Sister Sam. That was
yes,
a good
yes,
conversation.
yes. We was swinging and hammering on
That was good.
the conventional beauty standards that is racked this world. So I'm so appreciative that I know really, really smart people. Everybody don't got smart friends, so I'm grateful. But stay tuned for the next podcast. I appreciate you for watching, and be kind, love on yourself, love on somebody, because there's enough bad people out here. Okay, all right.